Because of the extraordinary circumstances, this meeting will be conducted by WebEx and will be recorded. Members of the public will be able to monitor this meeting by calling the number and the passcode listed on the posted agenda, or by clicking the link on the agenda to view the live stream of this meeting. And I'm not going to go through the guidelines because I think we're all familiar with them, but that's the disclaimer. And unless there are proposed changes to the posted agenda, we can move on to the approval of the minutes. And so no proposed changes to the agenda. Anyone? Great. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Cummings moves.
Second by Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, council members. Any discussion on the motion, additions or corrections? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson. Johnson. I know she was just there.
Aye. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse. Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion is adopted, and we'll move on to our business agenda. The first item being 2020-149. It's a joint committees item. It's a City of Edina 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And Mike Larson, Mr. Larson will present. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to you and to the committee members. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Fantastic. There's a small chance you may also hear meowing, but I'll try to keep that under control. So, hello, I'm Michael Larson, Senior Planner in Local Planning Assistance Unit in the Community Development Division. Before you now, or before you shortly, will be the review of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan for the City of Edina. Next slide, please. This map shows the location of regional system components within Edina. Regional park system elements include the 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail and the CP Rail Regional Trail Search Corridor. Regional highways include the Minnesota 62, the Crosstown, Highway 100, Highway 212, and US 169. The majority of wastewater generated within the city of Edina is conveyed through 6 council interceptors and treated at the council's Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Plant in St. Paul. A small area of southern Edina receives service through an interceptor that conveys wastewater to the Seneca Wastewater Treatment Plant located in Egan. Next slide, please. Figure 2 from the staff report identifies the city as urban, consistent with the Thrive MSP 2040 community designation. Edina is located in southeastern Hennepin County, surrounded by the communities of St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, Richfield, Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, and Hopkins. Next slide, please. The plan includes revised household and population forecasts, which council staff recommend, and is based on recent trends and likely development opportunities in the city. The forecast revision will be approved by the council simultaneous with action on the plan. Table 1, shown in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that the city will grow by 8,600 people, representing 5,800 households. There will be an increase of a forecasted increase of 4,300 jobs in the city in the same time frame. Next slide, please. Table 2 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density in the urbanized areas of the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 30.2 and 84 units per acre. Communities with an urban designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at average densities of at least 10 units per acre for new development and redevelopment, and Edina's plan is consistent with this policy. Next slide, please. As illustrated in Figure 3 of the staff report, the city is a fully developed community with only 2% undeveloped land. Approximately 60% of the city is residential. 17% is comprised of open space in the form of parks and golf courses. The city is home to the nation's first, as I'm sure all of you know, home to the nation's first enclosed shopping center, Southdale, the area around which has been evolving into a higher density mixed use district. The city also includes other mixed use districts located at 50th and France, as well as the Grandview district. Commercial, office, industrial, and uses are predominant northwest of the let me restate that. At the northwest of the interchange of Interstate 494 and Highway 100, commercial, office, and industrial uses are predominant. Next slide, please. The city's future land use map refers to Figure 4 in the staff report. The plan identifies potential change areas, the largest of which centers around the greater Southdale district in the southeastern portion of the city. This district includes areas along and east of France Avenue, as well as along 76th and 77th Streets. Other change areas include the Grandview district, 44th and France, 50th and France, 70th and Cahill, and Valley View Road in Wooddale. Each of these districts were the subject of small area plans, which inform the overall comprehensive plan and are included in the plan as appendices. Next slide, please. Proposed findings for you today are that the plan conforms to Metropolitan system plans, is consistent with council policies with the proposed forecast revisions, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. On Tuesday, June 9th, Environmental Services staff presented to the Environment Committee, and this will be on the full Met Council agenda on June 24th. Next slide. The proposed action for you today is to authorize the City of Edina to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, to revise the city's forecast upward, as shown in Table 1 of the attached review record, revise the city's affordable housing need allocation based on those forecasts for the 2021 to 2030 time period to 1,804 units. And 4, to advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for water supply. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Questions on that report, Councilmember Vento?
This is unrelated to the approval of the comp plan, but just out of curiosity, I recall learning about, I think it was probably about 25 years ago, I hope I've got this straight, that the Southdale Mall was actually on the City of Richfield's tax base or tax books. Is that still the case? And would the conversion of that mall to more housing and less retail require any special action by the City of Richfield? Or I'm just curious as if that's part of the conversation.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Vento, I'm actually unfamiliar with that, so I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to be helpful. Maybe someone else might be familiar with it.
Anyone?
Yep. Councilmember Cummings.
Mr. Chair, it may no longer be the case. That's probably been resolved. It was just a curious point and hanging in my mind, and it could be ancient history, so I apologize.
No sweat. I saw that Director Barajas went on camera for a second. Did you have something to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to offer that we could certainly look into it as we do the tax calculations for the fiscal disparities program anyway. I don't recall there being a special case where this would be on the Richfield tax program, but we can look into that and follow up with you.
Thank you. Further discussions or questions? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've not heard that or anything about that from either Richfield or Edina. So, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I've never heard that come up.
Cool. Thank you, Councilmember. Any further questions on the report? Further questions? If not, Mr. Larson has proposed a series of actions relative to the City of Edina 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Is there a motion to approve?
Cummings moves.
Thank you. A second?
Vento seconds.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Discussion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse, Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion carries. And you know what? I'm sorry I didn't ask this before we got started, but I do see we have former Met Council member John Commerce here, Tracy Nordstrom. Can I just ask, are you here for a specific issue? Was there something that you wanted to speak on? And Tracy.
Oh, hello, Chair Lilligren. We have I believe further in the agenda, there's an item on transit-oriented development in the Towerside Innovation District. We were asked to listen in and to witness the discussion.
Very cool. Thanks for being here. John, is that the same thing you're here for?
It is, Mr. Chair. I'm here on behalf of some work I'm performing for the YWCA of St. Paul.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. So we'll just keep moving through our business agenda. The next item is 2020-150, Joint Committees item. It's the City of St. Paul Parks 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And Patrick Boylan will present on that. Welcome, Mr. Boylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Patrick, as you said. I am a sector representative for Districts 13, 14, 15, and 16 in local planning assistance and community development. And this afternoon, I'll be talking to you about St. Paul Parks 2040 Comp Plan. I'd like the committee to know that Nate Sparks is a consultant with NEC Consulting Firm, and he is present, or I think he's present, and city staff, representative city staff, and then my immediate colleague and Mayor Sandy Dingle, I believe is present in the audience today too. Very good to work with both of them, and just wanted to let you know that they're both in the audience. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the regional systems, figure 1 of your staff report, and identifies the regional components within St. Paul Park. There's a regional trail search corridor that runs north-south, and one that extends off to the east. There's 1 meter and 1 lift station in the interceptor in the northern part of the city, which serves the sanitary sewer needs for the city of St. Paul Park. Next slide, please. St. Paul Park is located in southwestern Washington County. It's surrounded by the communities of Newport, Cottage Grove, Gray Cloud Island Township, and Grove Heights. The figure 2 from your staff report identifies the city as an emerging suburban edge community designated consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. I'd like to state that the entire city is considered emerging or suburban edge, and the 2 small green areas below the title of the city are not actually part of St. Paul Park corporate boundaries, but really part of Gray Cloud Island Township, which is diversified rural, which is why it has the green color. This is much like the discontinuous portion of the city of Crystal, White Bear Township, and Castle Rock Township found in other parts of the region. Next slide, please. The forecast found in the staff report, table 1, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts the city will grow by 1,900 people, representing 1,000 households. There will be an increase of 400 jobs in the city in the same time frame. Next slide, please. Table 2 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density in the emerging suburban edge areas of the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 3.81 and 9.71 units per acre. Communities in the emerging suburban edge designation under Thrive are expected to plan for a forecasted, let me stop for a moment. My initial writing, this isn't correct. The table in front of you is correct. So the overall density guided for residential land expected between 4.2 and 10.5 units per acre. Communities with an emerging suburban ed designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall average minimum densities of at least 3 to 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. St. Paul Park plan is consistent with that policy. One note also is stationary planning. The 2040 Transportation Policy Plan directs emerging suburban edge communities like St. Paul Park with planned highway bus rapid transit to guide a minimum of 8 units per acre and target 20 to 40 plus units per acre within the BRT Transitway station area. This is defined as an area with a 10-minute walk or half mile of the station. St. Paul Park has a planned BRT station along the Red Rock BRT. The mixed-use transit and mixed-use marina areas of the city are the dominant guided land uses near the Red Rock station, and they're 10 units per acre and a maximum of 30 units per acre. And so this plan is also consistent with the 2040 TPP. Next slide, please. The dominant land use in the city, shown in figure 3 here, is low-density residential. The very large light purple area in the north is the Endeavor St. Paul Park refinery. And notable is the Mississippi River on the western edge of the city. Next slide, please. The city's future land use map refers to is referred to as figure 4 in your staff report. The city is planning for a continuation of low density residential. It's planning for mixed use near the river. The dark blue near the top is the St. Paul Park refinery. Next slide, please. The proposed plan is that it conforms to the Metropolitan System plans. It's consistent with council policies. The plan is compatible with plans of adjacent local government units and affected jurisdictions. Next, please. Last week, the Environmental Services staff presented it to the Environment Committee, and later this month on June 24th, the full council will hear this plan as well. The proposed action in front of you is to authorize the city of St. Paul Park to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and to advise the city to provide the council the date the city adopted the final local water management plan, or LWMP, a copy of the final adopted LWMP that will be included in the plan document that the city adopts if it differs from the draft January 2018 version that was contained in the last plan submittal. To also advise the city to implement the advisory committee comments in surface water management, and to advise the city to adopt the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area Plan, or MRCA, within 60 days after receiving final DNR approval, and submit a copy of the final adopted plan and evidence of adoption to the DNR, the Metropolitan Council, and National Park Service within 10 days after the adoption. Just as a reminder, Mayor Dingle, I believe, is present, and consulting staff as well. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Boylan, and we thank the mayor and the team from Edina for being here and for your cooperative work and collaboration. Any questions on that report? Any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Boylan has proposed a series of actions relative to the Edina 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen, did you want to move approval? Nope. Okay.
I'll let the I'm happy to move for approval, but I'd let I don't know.
I do apologize. I mistook.
I was getting prepared to second.
District.
I'm sorry.
Okay. My apologies. Usually I'm better prepared. Is there a motion for approval, please?
Well, if no one else will, I will move for approval.
Thank you, Councilmember. Much appreciated. Is there a thank you, Councilmember Lee, for the second. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion carries. And moving on the agenda to our third business item, 2020-151. It's the City of Lakeland Shores 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and that will be presented by Jake Riley. Mr. Riley, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Today you have before you, I'm Jake Harley, Sector Representative and Senior Planner for District 3 in the Local Planning Assistance Group in Community Development. I've been getting to know District 12, which is where today's comp plan update for Lakeland Shores is located. And I believe Mark Nagel from the City of Lakeland Shores, he's their consulting planner, is on the call today. If not, either way, I'd like to thank Mark and the city's mayor and council for their hard work on the plan. So before you today is the review of the City of Lakeland Shores 2040 Comprehensive Plan. In front of you, you have a map of the regional systems, which does not include anything directly in the City of Lakeland Shores boundaries. The major roadway, CASA 18, is actually in Lakeland, which surrounds the City of Lakeland Shores on 3 sides. But of note is the St. Croix River, which forms the entire border of the eastern portion of Lakeland Shores. Next slide, please. The community designation for Lakeland Shores is in figure 2 from the staff report, identifies the city as rural residential, a community designation consistent with Thrive MSP, which asks folks to plan for densities not to exceed 1 unit per 10 acres whenever possible. On the existing densities are 1 to 2.5 acre lots. Lakeland Shores is in Washington County, and on the next slide you can see that the city is not forecasted to grow. In fact, it'll see a reduction in households and employment and population through 2040. And so the council will ultimately approve this forecast when they authorize the plan. Next slide, please. Existing land use in Lakeland Shores is in figure 3 of your staff report. It's predominantly residential, with 91% of the city being residentially used. There's a small area of existing commercial office and warehouse land adjacent to the transportation corridor, as I mentioned before, which is CASA 18 and forms the border to the west. Next slide, please. The future land use for 2040 looks very similar to that of today. As it's a small, mostly residential city, none of the land use is expected to change within the planning horizon. Next slide, please. The committee today's proposed findings are that the plan conforms to the Metropolitan System plans. It's consistent with policies with the forecast changes as proposed, and it's compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide. The meeting schedule, I'm sorry I didn't update the slides. We'll fix that on the website, but the meeting will be on Wednesday, June 24th for the full council's consideration. And because there's no sewer system in Lakeland Shores, they don't have to go to the Environment Committee. So the proposed action before you today is to authorize the City of Lakeland Shores to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, revise the City of Lakeland Shores forecast as shown in Table 1 of the review record, and advise the city to provide the council the date the Water Management Office approves the final local water management plan and the date the city adopts that plan, and advise the city to provide the council with a copy of said plan when available. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Any questions on that report? Any questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
Cummings moves.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Wolf seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, I would ask Michelle to please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion carries. And thank you, Mr. Riley. We'll move on to our fourth business item. It's item 2020-155. It's a Livable Communities Demonstration Account Pre-Development Funding Recommendations. And Hannah Gary will present on that. Welcome, Ms. Gary.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
I am Hannah Gary. I'm a senior planner with the Livable Communities Act, and I am here to present the 2020 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grant funding recommendations. Next slide, please. The Livable Communities Demonstration Account funds projects that link housing, jobs, services, and transit to create inspiring and lasting livable communities. Next slide. The fund distribution plan, which was adopted in February of 2020, allocated $500,000 to the LCDA pre-development program. $250,000 is available to distribute in each of the 2 funding rounds. 4 pre-development applications came in for the spring funding round. Applications were reviewed by a team of council staff. The applications were scored on LCA goals, which includes land use, jobs, housing, connections, and environmental design, as well as readiness, catalytic value, demonstration value, and partnerships in process. Applications must score a minimum of 30 points in order to be eligible for funding. Next slide, please. There are 2 funding options before you today. The first is to award 4 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grants for a total of $300,000. The second is to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. Next slide. And option 2 is to award 3 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grants for $300,000. And to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. Next slide. The 2 funding recommendation options are broken out here. Of the 2 options presented, staff is recommending option 1. The review found demonstration value in all 4 projects, and staff believe that the partial awards given in option 1 will help move each project forward. Next slide. I'll now give a review of each of the 4 projects that we saw come in through this grant round. This project is located in Brooklyn Park. It's proposing a small business incubator on a currently vacant site at the intersection of Brooklyn Boulevard and West Broadway Avenue. The site is adjacent to a planned station along the Blue Line light rail expansion. The city is researching a model for a small business incubator as an anti-displacement strategy. The project would serve as a, previous slide, please. The project would serve as a model for other communities looking to provide affordable commercial space for local businesses. The idea for this project came out of partnerships with the Liberian Business Association and African Career Education and Resources, Inc. The need for a small business incubator and cultural gathering space came out of these conversations. Uses for the grant include financial analysis and a market study to develop an initial pro forma, project planning to define space needs, operation needs, and leasing structure. This would also include community engagement to define these needs. The project is also looking at a space analysis to identify space needs, a leasing structure, and engage with potential tenants. Next slide, please. This is a project from the city of St. Paul. This project seeks to redevelop the YWCA facility located at the corner of Selby and Western Avenue. In addition to making the facilities more accessible to the community through expansion and a more cohesive design, the project team plans to include affordable housing as part of the redevelopment. The project would link health and fitness facilities, community programming and services, affordable housing, and community assets like Boyd Park. The project plans to include environmental sustainability elements through biophilic design, which would increase connections to nature for everyone using the building. The grant uses include community engagement and design workshops, site plan options for configuring housing on the site, soil testing, and a historic building evaluation. Next slide, please. This project is from the city of Richfield. This is a multi-phase project looking at bringing 80 to 100 apartment units and 4 to 12 family-style townhome units. Affordability levels have not yet been determined, but at least 20% of the units will be affordable. Richfield has identified a specific need for units that are accessible to people with disabilities. The project is proposing housing units that will offer more accessible housing options. Grant activities include site and phasing plans, community engagement, financial analysis, stormwater management plan, soil testing, a travel demand management plan, and a uniform relocation act analysis. Under funding option 1, this project would receive $100,000, and under funding option 1, this project would receive $50,000. Under funding option 2, this project would receive $100,000. Next slide, please. This project is located in the city of Brooklyn Center. They're proposing a 4-story workforce housing development with 88 units affordable at 50 to 60% AMI. 51% of the proposed units would be 3 bedrooms, which provides a need of larger affordable housing units. The project team is in conversation with a neighboring senior center to develop a partnership between the 2 developments and connect seniors living in the care facility with children living in the new development. The goal is to foster multi-generational community connections. Grant uses for this site include site plan development, design workshops, community engagement, and a market feasibility and pro forma creation. Under funding option 1, this project would receive $50,000, and under funding option 2, this project would not receive funding. Next slide, please. And again, there are 2 funding recommendations before you today. The first is to award 4 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grants for $300,000 and to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. The second option is to award 3 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grants for $300,000 and to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Any questions on that report? Councilmember Chambliss, and then Councilmember Alice Engelbrecht.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. This is really the exciting part, one of the exciting parts about being on the Community Development Committee. I love the options to create opportunities for more affordable housing. As a person that's been a resident of Brooklyn Park and being very involved in all communities, and in particular the immigrant community, I know that this concept has been proposed for many, many years, and I'm so glad to see that it's up here as an option, the business incubator for Brooklyn Park. And I am definitely planning on supporting option 1 for this proposal. It's going to be an asset to the business community and the neighboring neighborhoods, and opportunities for businesses to be strengthened and grow, and opportunity for consumers to be able to purchase products from the businesses that are diverse products, which we're lacking in this city.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further,
one more thing. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
I'm also in favor of the Brooklyn Center affordable housing, because it's offering the 3-bedroom units, which are affordable and not in great supply. So that's great. More affordable housing opportunities, 3 bedrooms, extra pluses for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion on that report, Councilmember Alice Engelbrecht.
Thanks. I was just wondering, I might have missed this, but the YWCA project, was there a percentage of what type of affordable housing was it? Do you have the information about the degree to which it would be subsidized?
The specifics for the affordable housing had not yet been determined at the time of application, but John Commerce is working on the project and is on this call. So I'd offer maybe if John, you have more details on the specifics of the affordable housing there.
Mr. Commerce, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember, the intent of the pre-development grant is in part to really test what the affordability mix can be for the units that the YW is really excited to bring to the site. So it's unfortunately not something we have in hand as far as what the price points are, the affordability of the range of units. But that's a really high priority of the YWCA. There's no question that it's going to be part of the project. And through this pre-development process, I know the YW looks forward to coming back with more detail about the unit mix that they're going to bring forward in conjunction with the developer on site. I hope that's
Thank you for that information. I'll just support just to share agreement with my colleague Councilmember Chambliss. Just really excited about the projects in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center. They're very much needed and fairly innovative. I also am supportive of the project with the YWCA, and I hope and I'm sure that they're thinking about more than just 60% AMI, which would be really what's needed in maintaining that the community is not further displaced out of that part of St. Paul.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion on the report, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, and I was circling back to see if it was in the part of the agenda report, but is 4 applications pretty typical for a round like this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. 4 applications is typically more than we usually see with LCDA pre-development. We historically have been oversubscribed by a little bit, but 4 applications is more than I have seen in the previous 3 rounds of working with the program.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. It is really exciting to see these various proposals. And the diverse ideas that are coming forward. It's really exciting to see that in front of this committee. I know also, speaking of the Richfield proposal, the 6501 Penn Avenue project has been a key part of Richfield's redevelopment effort in that Penn Avenue corridor, which is so important, such an important commercial and transportation corridor of Richfield. The HRA purchased that property initially because of its potential to catalyze renewal efforts along the corridor and the mix of both affordable and market rate housing. So, you know, it's again, I wish there was unlimited funding and we could give everybody what they need to move forward. But that one too, I just want to speak to how important that project is as well in the scheme of things.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion on the report?
Mr. Chair, this is Councilmember Wolf.
Yeah, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you. I guess, I mean, people have been talking about the individual projects, but the question is, do we go with scenario 1 or scenario 2? And I would suggest that option 1, since it gives everybody something, is my preferred option. I'm seeing nodding heads. If it's okay, can I just move option 1?
Second by Lee.
Great, sounds good. And then I just had one quick question from staff, just because this is the first time, at least that I recall, that recommendations like this came to us with 2 options. And so, Ms. Gary, I just wonder if you could say a word about why 2 options were brought forward and both recommended rather than just 1.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In during the review of the applications, we did find that there was a significant demonstration value in each of the proposals that came forward. And In the fund distribution plan, we had allocated $250,000 for LCDA pre-development, and then there was a remaining $50,000 available from the TOD pre-development account. And due to the demonstration value that we saw in each of these projects, we did bring forward the recommendation to partially fund both. And I spoke with staff at both Brooklyn Center and Richfield to talk with them about whether or not a $50,000 award would still help move the project forward. And they both indicated that yes, it would help their projects move forward.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Geary. That was very helpful. We have the motion before us to approve option 1. Any further discussion on the motion? Further discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings. Okay. Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That motion is adopted. And thank you, Mr. Cummings, for being here to answer questions. And so we'll move on to our 5th business item, which is 2020-156, Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development, Pre-Development Funding Recommendations. And Stephen Klimek is here to present. Welcome, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. To confirm, can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Again, thank you. I am Stephen Klimek, Senior Planner with the Livable Communities Act. I'm here to present the Spring 2020 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development, or LCDA TOD, Pre-Development Grant Funding Recommendations. Next slide, please. The Council's Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Grants promote moderate to higher density development projects located within walking distance of a major transit stop that typically include a mix of uses such as housing, jobs, restaurants, shops, and entertainment. The LCDA TOD pre-development grant category is designed to focus on a specific future development or redevelopment project that exemplifies LCA TOD goals and to provide resources that will help lead to a project that is not another typical development and one that can lead to demonstration or replicability elsewhere in the region. The fund distribution plan adopted in March 2020 allocated $500,000 to the LCDA TOD pre-development program. $250,000 is available to distribute in each spring and fall funding opportunity. Next slide, please. 2 LCDA TOD pre-development applications were received in the spring funding round. Applications were reviewed by a team of Council LCA staff. The applications were scored on TOD design and demonstration, transit accessibility, walkability, and ridership, housing, jobs, catalysts, and process and partnerships. Applications must score a minimum of 39 points to be eligible for the LCDA TOD pre-development funding. Next slide, please. And this scoring process has yielded a staff recommendation that the Metropolitan Council award 2 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development pre-development grants for $200,000 and authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Next slide, please. Given that recommendation, this table is a summary of the recommended projects. The total request this spring was $200,000 between 2 projects, with $250,000 available to award in this round. 1 project was submitted by the City of Minneapolis, and 1 project was submitted by the City of St. Paul. Next slide, please. The City of Minneapolis application is for the Towerside District Stormwater Project. This request and recommended award is $100,000. It's part of a larger 17-acre redevelopment area near the Prospect Park Green Line Station and is currently primarily vacant land. The current development projects include a food hall, market rate housing with 143 units with ground floor retail or ground floor commercial, as well as 142 units of affordable housing. Those units are 30 to 80% AMI and are under 60% with income averaging. Future phases plan to include office and additional mixed use and commercial buildings. This project is a district scale stormwater management system for the entire redevelopment area that integrates stormwater functions and public green spaces with bike and pedestrian connections. The project is a model of stacked infrastructure as well as strong public-private partnerships between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, Towerside Innovation District, the Wall Companies, and the City of Minneapolis. And the grant uses for this project are the planning and engineering for the district stormwater system and the integrated public realm spaces. Next slide, please. The City of St. Paul application is for the Keystone Community Food Site Project. The requested and recommended award is $100,000. This project seeks to create a community food site facility along the Green Line in the Midway area of St. Paul and increase healthy, fresh food resources for low-income residents of Ramsey County. The project would consolidate facilities into a central and accessible location and will include a new distribution facility and operations for a food shelf grocery space, food truck, community space, and crisis support services. The need for a community food site came out of deep community engagement efforts, and the project would serve as a model for how to incorporate essential services and daily needs into a TOD area. The grant uses for this project would be site feasibility and selection, including the development of site plan options, community engagement, further community engagement, and design workshops. Next slide, please. And so in conclusion, staff's spring 2020 funding recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council award 2 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Pre-Development Grants for $200,000 and authorizes Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Klimek, for that report and for your work on this. Questions or discussion on that report? Councilmember Chambliss.
Oh, thank you. Both of these demonstration grant proposals are great. And I want to say, in terms of the food site, I think this would be a great model for other communities, especially where we have what we call food deserts, where people have to travel to, outside of their neighborhood to get fresh and good food. I know that there are areas of North Minneapolis that could benefit from a model like this. So I definitely intend to support it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? Councilmember Lindstrom. I see you. Councilmember Lindstrom?
There, I was on mute. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question on Towers side. I'm curious to know if they plan on doing anything innovative around the stormwater.
Mr. Klimek.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you for that. I think some of the innovation in this project is that it's a district scale stormwater system. So it's looking at essentially a multi-site project. And it's looking at how it can stack as many functions as possible in terms of green public realm spaces with it. In terms of innovation in technology, I'm not sure if anyone from the MWO is here. They may be. I'd be welcome them to join in and maybe comment on that if possible.
Can I ask
Is there anyone that
what
can
does
comment?
it mean to stack?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Sure. You mentioned to stack. What exactly? What's the definition of that?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember, thank you. The idea of stacked infrastructure is the kind of layering of functions. So instead of stormwater management just taking up space to only perform stormwater management activities, that space could perform multiple activities. And so this is actually a phase 2 project of a phase 1 that did a similar smaller scale project, collecting stormwater from multiple sites and layering essentially a park space on top of what was the stormwater infrastructure.
Thank you. And then was there further response to Councilmember Lindstrom's first question? Is there someone from the team?
Yes, I'm Dan Coleman. I'm with the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization. I'm the principal planner there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so question was what innovation would be occurring there, I believe. So we have been working with, we started this, the first phase of this work is just south of that area. It's 8 acres of private development, 4 different developers in that case that are we've assembled a shared system with them, and there's a reuse system that MWMO paid for that all the developers have hooked up to and are able to reuse the water, and the new Towerside Park there as well that we were part of helping build, gain an easement and do further treatment, higher quality UV treatment. So part of the innovation here is just looking at, and the stack systems question is really how do we do infrastructure so it becomes much more the framework for the redevelopment and creates a much higher quality public place to put development within. So in the second phase, we started to work with Park Board and Wall development company to talk about, instead of leading with the streets and the building footprints, to lead with where's that green space. So we really look at a hybrid of what the private land is, what the public land is. So what park space or the regional trail system that is a part that councils would possibly has been dedicated through that area, through that site, as well as what easements we would require as a watershed for the stormwater treatment on a regional basis or a district basis. And by combining all those together into a larger public realm, we create a much more, I guess, not vibrant, but a healthy place, and a place that is accessible by all. We think with the green line coming through this area, with the mix of affordable and market rate housing there, that we're offering just a much better quality of life to folks, residents that are in that area. So that's why we're, as a watershed, supporting more of this integration. We also are looking at restorative development as well, which is even taking it a step further, where we're looking at how does a site like this, when we do environmental things in terms of water and habitat, which is our mission, flooding, water quality, and habitat improvement, how does that, what are the social and economic impacts we have on the area as well? So we look at a net positive space or return that we're trying to get across the board versus just getting to the line of sustainability. We're trying to look beyond that and see that how can we balance out impacts we're having on not only environmental area, but the social and economic realms as well. So we have a parallel study that's going on, feasibility right now, that's looking at those sort of things. And this is a potential, we don't have that, such a Minneapolis-wide study. So this doesn't necessarily have, the city hasn't selected a site, but this is the criteria for that study definitely will give us a better feel for what we can do in the future in an area like this. So we look forward to continuing to do work in this area. And this is the first step in doing that, securing the land and easements and everything we need.
Thank you, Mr. Kalman. Councilmember Lindstrom, does that answer your questions?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Further discussion, I think I saw Councilmember Chambliss requesting the floor and then Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, we've been talking about the scoring, I think, since January, and it's been a few months before we reviewed that. It would be helpful to kind of get some more detail about how these projects were scored.
Thank you, Councilmember. So on these two particular projects and the scoring on those, Mr. Klimek, is that something that you can?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, council members.
Thank you.
We, through the fund distribution plan, have set up categories and point totals for each category in scoring. And so in the LCDA TOD pre-development program, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories, a total of 65 points that we could assign. The TOD design and demonstration that we scored had 15 points, Transit accessibility, walkability, and ridership had 10 points. Housing had 10 points. Jobs had 5 points. Catalyst had 15 points. And process and partnerships had 10 points. And we looked at about having the project score 60% or higher to have a 39 points or more to proceed to be eligible.
Okay, thank you for that. Is it possible to get that added to the minutes? Or receive that after this meeting and receive that after this meeting?
Absolutely, we can share that in the scoring tabulations that we had. The LCA staff, myself, Tara Beard, Hannah, Hillary, Marcus, all reviewed the applications and scored different sections of those different criteria. And so we're happy to share that.
Awesome, thank you. Lisa, were you gonna say something?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Chambliss. I just wanted to add too that we also link to the fund distribution plan in each of the staff reports. So in Hannah's and in Stephen's and in Marcus's upcoming too. So you can see the full range of scoring rubrics for each of the programs in there. And then we also include the points that are in, that each of those projects received as part of the staff report in the presentation as well. So we try to get you and get that information to you in as many ways as we can.
Thank you. And does that answer your question, Councilmember Chambliss?
Yeah, I'm kind of like a graph person, so just having it in a chart versus just kind of summarized in a word descriptions helps me to make better decisions.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is this, as we look at all of these and we've got our scoring, and maybe we've talked about this before, and I don't know what kind of mechanisms we have with the funding that we're granting, but is there a way also to set a hope, an expectation, some sort of desire that we want them to be, looking at these potential projects through a lens that hires diversity and incorporates diversity as they're expending funds throughout the project? I'm just, as we're trying to be more inclusive, and we're serving community through many of these projects, but I'm just wondering, how can we, and maybe the entities that are involved have those goals already established within their own organizations, whether it's the city or the county or other nonprofits or whatever it might be. But I'm just curious, as we continue to help fund and do the good work throughout the region with our lens, just like we're trying at the council to make sure that we're also trying to be more inclusive and bring in minority-owned businesses into projects where, there are public dollars being invested.
Thank you. And is that something, Mr. Klimek, you can answer?
I can speak to that briefly, Mr. Chair, council members. We do ask in the applications about how these projects are going to engage with wealth building and working with local businesses. And I can share that I can look through the details there. I'm not recalling them immediately about what the responses are for these two applications to those questions. But also the applicants, the cities often will have their own requirements around small underutilized business programs before they are actually able to then have a subrecipient that pass these grants off to, include, so that would be Tower Site Innovation District and Keystone Community Services often have to meet those kinds of requirements with our applicants.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate that. And maybe if there could just be a short note for us when we were looking at these that was looked at, or any interesting detail. I don't suppose, is there scoring around that? Do they get scored for that? Or is it just more of an informational, we're kind of checking to see if that's in place?
Mr. Chair, council members, we do account for that in our process and partnerships category, as well as the jobs category of the application and the scoring.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, so what I'm hearing is that it is taken into account and that it would help bolster scoring, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further questions on the report or discussion? Further questions? Oh, hey, welcome back, Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Oh my goodness, I just lost my screen. So, there we go. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Klimek has recommended action for today for this item, and I would entertain a motion to approve.
Bless motion to approve.
Thank you,
Vento
Councilmember.
seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That motion carries, and we'll move on to our sixth business item of the evening. It's 2020-171. It's the Livable Communities Act Tax-Based Revitalization Account grant recommendations, and Marcus Martin will present. Mr. Martin, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for putting this item on your agenda. I can see that Livable Communities is very well represented at this meeting.
Yes, it is.
So I will start off by revisiting the purpose of the account. As you know, the purpose of, next slide. The purpose of the TBRA account is to help clean up contamination for redevelopments that will improve the tax base or add jobs or affordable housing to communities that are voluntarily participating in the Livable Communities Act. The program is also expected to provide the highest public benefits for the costs incurred and consider joint funding from other partners. Next slide. So our initial call for applications was back in the beginning of March. This was before the effects of the pandemic were known before that. We received 14 applications from project sites in Apple Valley, Minneapolis, Minnetonka, New Brighton, Shakopee, and St. Paul, so we're well represented. All of the applications were for cleanup. We did not receive any environmental investigation nor seed grants requests. We offered 3 million and received 3.4 million in requests. This funding, as I mentioned before, was all for investigation. The account, for cleanup, the account is oversubscribed, and this is going to be an important condition for imposing funding limits, as we'll see in a few slides from now. Next slide, please. So the following 12 cleanup projects are recommended for TBRA funding. The highest scoring projects are listed first. Grants are recommended for United Village Midway Block B, 125,000. Fairview and University, 111,800. Elliott Twins, 21,100. Vimo Seda, 275,000. Anishinaabe 3, 42,600. Welcome Yards Housing, 191,700. Slide, please. Shady Oak Crossing, 414,200. 1505 Central, 141,700. Snelling Yards, 207,600. Riverfront Bluff, 458,600. MyCom, 400,000. Olsen Housing, 610,700. So As I mentioned before, when there's a high demand for the funds, higher than is available by statute, up to 50% can be awarded to a single community, and up to 75% can go to combined amount for projects in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Slide 8, please. So the amount recommended for the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul in this cycle is 58% of the total available. That's well below the 75% maximum. So in this case, the statutory limit has been met. Next slide. Similarly, the amount recommended for projects in the city of Minneapolis adds up to 50% of the total amount. So the single city statutory limit is also. Next slide. Let's take a look at the projects that are not recommended. 2 cleanup projects are not recommended. These projects did not meet our minimum score. According to the fund distribution plan, each project has to score at least 70 points or higher. In the case of Apple Valley, this project had the lowest demonstrated need for cleanup as compared to the other applications. So this project could be considered kind of the cleanest of the brownfield sites. And that is a hard factor to overcome. In the case of the St. Paul site or the Hazel Street Assisted Living, this project was already constructed and most of the cleanup was already completed before the application was submitted. The relatively small size of the project, it's a 24-unit project, and the market rate factor made it a lower priority for funding. Next slide. So shown here are the cumulative expected benefits to the region if the staff recommendation is approved. After redevelopment, gains are expected in the annual tax base, jobs, housing units, including affordable units, as well as commercial and industrial space. Next slide, please. In closing, the staff recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council award 12 tax-based revitalization account grants as in Table 1 in the business item, and authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. Thank you, and I'm glad to take any questions here.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Questions on that report? Councilmember Johnson, and then Councilmember Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. So the links that you guys provide are great. Thank you. So on this one, hold on, I'm scrolling back to the top of it. There's up to $250,000 available for something, I'm getting there, seed funding, in addition to the regular funds. Am I reading that right? Am I in the right section?
Mr. Martin?
Including up to $250 for site investigation. Is that part of this?
Chair, Councilmember Johnson, yes, it was offered as part of the funding cycle. However, we didn't receive any requests for it. So the current recommendation is that we not award any of that funding and offer it again in the fall.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, and how, just, and not to belabor it because you wouldn't get any, but how is that different? Is that like something that's kind of upstream a lot further in the process of cleanup, or the purpose of that funding is?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson. So the purpose of that funding is for similar uses for investigation or cleanup. However, that funding is targeted towards areas of concentrated poverty. Okay. Another change that we have made to make that more accessible is that we don't require a project a redevelopment project in that case. So if people want to act proactively, they can do a limited cleanup. We can't do all of the cleanup necessary until we know what type of project and where the building footprint would be and the depths and so forth, but we can offer some assistance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that answer, Marcus.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. Further questions, Councilmember Chambliss.
I think Linnea had a question prior.
Oh, my apologies. Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
I had put it in the chat, Chair, in the hopes that maybe as the presentation was happening, we could get the information. I was just curious to know if it's possible, and I don't need this information right now, but to have there's a visual that was shown of the map of the locations, and I was wondering if we could get the dollar amount and the name of the project next to where they are geographically in a more specific manner than just Minneapolis, for example.
Mr. Martin.
Chair, Councilmember Linnea, could you explain to me just a little bit more in terms of the visual that would be most helpful for you? So we do have just kind of the address lists in the back of each and a one-page summary for each project, but you would like to see kind of the points.
I was just wondering.
The dollar amount. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. Just that map, that visual at the very beginning of the presentation with the dollar amount next to the recommended dollar amount.
I see. Okay. So yes, we can provide that. That map it shows the kind of all of the projects. So we could show the ones that are recommended, and then maybe the other two in a different way.
Or you could just put 0 for the ones, or put not NR for the ones that are not recommended.
Very good. I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chambliss.
Okay, two things. One is, I don't know if I'm just being paranoid or whatever, but a lot of times I feel like I make a request and I get a nod and then nothing, and then I notice that other people make a request and they, okay, yeah, we'll present it in that way that you're requesting. So just to staff to try to, have some quality in how we're responding to the council member requests. And then the other, let's see if I can remember what my other, I know, it's regarding Olsen housing and having that map that council member Linnea Atlas Ingebrigtsen suggested helps. That 641 Girard Terrace, is that Olsen Memorial housing off of Olsen Memorial, or is that another area?
It is. So this is the Olsen Townhomes project. So it includes, if you kind of think of the site, it has mostly a vacant portion in the northern part of this project, and then a lot of townhouses. It's kind of near kind of Van Wyck, kind of where Van Wyck comes down.
Okay, yeah, that is Olsen Memorial of Highway 55. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, they have the largest amount. They're dead last in the table, one, from what I can recall. And, I'm just thinking about environmental justice and the fact that that is an area that has been historically, poor. I know a lot of the contamination happened a long time ago, some of it more recently, especially with the metals plant that was nearby. And the effects of that contamination led to concerning levels of lead in the air. I think as a council, we need to be a part of the solution for that. Of course, every area is important, but I would like to maybe see why they were last in the priority, or if you're thinking that in the next round, they might be higher up in the ladder. I don't know if we should look at this as, this is the last chance, or, consider the priority in the next round of funding.
Thank you, Councilmember. And they are recommended for funding, right? They're the 12th of the 12 projects that are recommended in the action. It's also the highest amount that's going to be awarded this round. So I just want to be clear about that. Mr. Martin, did you want to add something?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Chambliss, that is correct. That was what I was going to add, that they are being recommended for funding. We acknowledge that there is some soil contamination on that site. There's some issues to be remedied there, and we would like to support.
Okay, maybe I missed it. Can you explain more about the order?
So there are only 2 projects that are not being recommended for funding. Those are the projects in Apple Valley and 1 project in St. Paul. All of the other projects, all of the other 12 are being recommended.
So the order in the table makes no difference.
It doesn't make a difference for receiving funding unless you're below that, the amounts that we have available.
But you're right there, Councilmember, that the Olsen project and another project, I'm not looking at it right now, they were the lowest scorers of the recommended projects. They both scored at 70. Yeah. But yeah, okay, I kind of lost that page. Okay.
Okay, that answers my question. They ranked lower, so that's why they're at the bottom. But again, I'm glad that they're in there. I had family members that lived in that area, and so it gets personal. I try to be unbiased, but I just need the clarity. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you. Thanks. Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to kind of follow on with that. Some of the scoring gets kind of complex, and basically it's how dirty the property is and how much tax base it's going to bring in. Marcus could probably say more about that, but there's a lot of different variables in there. The money doesn't come from us; it comes from the fiscal disparities pot, and there's certain outcomes that we're supposed to work towards by state statute. And so I don't really want to mess with the scoring right now. It seems to be working fairly well, and we put the scoring out once a year. So the next time to discuss that would be next spring when we do a relook at the scoring. But it got funded. I think all of the projects are worthy projects for different reasons. And the one in my district didn't get funded because it's too clean. It just sometimes works out that way. But I think the mix of projects is good. The scoring is working so far, seems to be, and I have no problem with approving the proposed action that the staff has put out.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion on the report? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve
Bento
the 12
moves
projects.
approval.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second? Was that you, Councilmember Wolf?
Wolf seconds.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
It looks like she's having technical difficulties.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to see if Councilmember Ingebrigtsen is back in yet, but it doesn't look like it. All right. So we will move on the agenda to our 7th business item. It's 2020-172. It's the Metro Scale Climate Leader Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. And Mr. Wycheck will present. Welcome, Mr. Wycheck.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, you're a little muffled, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. This is hopefully an exciting business item for you all today. It's a little bit unique, but also an exciting opportunity. We've been invited to become a metro scale climate leader through the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, and I'll be presenting on that. My name is Eric Lychuk. I'm a planning analyst and local planning assistant within the Community Development Division here at the Council. Next slide, please. So what is the Global Covenant of Mayors? It's actually the largest global alliance for city climate leadership in the world. So it's international in terms of its scope, but there's a pretty large US presence at this point, and we'll get into that in a second. The real purpose of the covenant is to provide a shared long-term vision of a world where committed mayors and local governments in alliance with partners accelerate ambitious, measurable climate and energy initiatives. And one of the goals of the initiative is to have an inclusive, just, low emission and climate resilient future, helping to meet and exceed the Paris Agreement objectives 2015. Next slide, please. A little bit of background here. Mayors and local leaders commit to the Global Covenant by taking these concrete measures with long-term impact to tackle the interconnected challenges of climate change mitigation, adaptation, and access to sustainable energy. And just for context, we did apply for this particular opportunity in April of last year. We were unsuccessful at that time. It was very competitive. But recently, the Global Covenant of Mayors approached us to join this pilot cohort of metro regions. So they've come back to us because of some programmatic changes, and they want us to join. So the council has been invited to join GCOM as a member of this pilot regional program called Metro Scale Climate Leaders. And just to let you know, the other regions, there's 3 other regions in this grouping, and they are the Chicago Metro region, Kansas City region, and the Metropolitan DC region. So we would be the 4th. Next slide, please. So who are the members of GCOM? Within the US, we have 170 US cities. So again, this is mostly city-based initiative, but we do have the 4 regions. We would be the 4th one of the 3. And in terms of the number of residents covered by the covenants, 65 million US residents. There are 2 US cities within our region that are members of the covenant, and that's St. Paul and Minneapolis. Worldwide, there's 10,000 cities across 6 continents and 138 countries. Next slide, please. So why should we join this group? Well, for one thing, there's no additional funding required of the council outside of our staff time and budget already committed to current climate change and resilience planning projects. Joining GCOM would acknowledge the council's existing climate change planning and resilience work. It would support the council's work through technical assistance provided through the program. It connects that work to a wider network of US and international partners, and it assists the council's effort toward meeting the goals identified in the Next Generation Energy Act, which puts Minnesota back on track to meet the goals through the governor's executive order, which was recently released. Next slide, please. This just gives you an idea. I wanted the committee members to understand that that left-hand column is really a list of the commitments that we would have to commit to through joining GCOM. But as you can see, the council's already doing all of these initiatives already under our own steam. We've been at this for a while now. So we're not really committing to anything new. This is just an acknowledgement of the work we're currently doing and work that's either complete or that's currently underway at the council. Next slide, please. So I'm going to read out this proposed action, which is fairly long, and the reason I'm reading it out is because this is what is expected for us to commit to as a council. Staff recommend that the Metropolitan Council commit to the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, joining thousands of other cities and local governments around the world currently engaged in climate leadership. Specifically, within no more than 3 years of this commitment, the council pledges to develop, formally adopt, and report on the following: a community-scale greenhouse gas emissions inventory, an assessment of climate hazards and vulnerabilities, ambitious, measurable, and time-bound targets to reduce and limit greenhouse gas emissions, ambitious adaptation vision and goals based on quantified scientific evidence when possible to increase local resilience to climate change, ambitious and just goal to improve access to sustainable energy, and plans to address climate change mitigation, low emission development, climate resilience and adaptation, and access to sustainable energy, including provisions for regular progress reports. Next slide, please. Finally, the council targets and action plans for mitigation, low emission development will be quantified and consistent with and exceed the relevant national commitments defined through the United States NDC, which was agreed at Paris. And we are actually already working towards commitments that are more aggressive than the United States NDC just through Minnesota Next Generation Energy Act. The council acknowledges that there may be additional region or country-specific commitments to adhere to agreed through local membership networks or through direct engagement with GCOM partners. And finally, the council acknowledges that continued membership in the GCOM and associated local chapters or regional covenants as established is contingent on complying with the above requirements within established timeframes. And I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Wycheck, for that report and for your work on this, and especially for emphasizing it's work that we're already doing. And discussion from committee members, questions on the report. Councilmember Johnson, then Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is great. And I was looking through the other report too. In addition to Minneapolis and St. Paul in our region, what other cities? I know there are other cities that have signed on, right? And so then where I'm going with this is then do we, since they probably have the same requirements to do, and we're probably doing a lot of the data, I think is what you said, a lot of the research around this anyway. Do we then just work in concert with them? And then my second part of this is it may have other requirements that we don't know at this point, but that might come down the road. I'm always just, I'm sure at any point in time we can figure out what that means, but I always like to know what could that mean if possible.
Mr. Wycheck.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Those are great questions. My understanding of this is really that we don't, while we will be working in concert with local communities, because we always do in terms of our technical assistance. We're really primarily working on regional policies and our current initiatives. So we're not really working with local governments per se, although we do provide a lot of technical assistance in this area. The two cities that I know that are on GCOM within the region are Minneapolis and St. Paul. We also have a program in Minnesota called Minnesota Green Step Cities, which you're probably aware of, which is very similar to this actually. And we work really closely with the Green Step Cities through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. The next question is a good question. You asked about further commitments down the line. And my understanding is that if anything was to drastically change, GCOM would actually have to ask us to recommit. So, they're not going to ask us anything beyond what we've already committed to here or what we're currently doing. So if things were to really change drastically, we would have to probably go through this process again and come through to the committees and the council.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Eric. That answers my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, I was going to ask you if you learned of GCOM through the UN climate change conference that you attended last year, but then I recall that you said we actually applied for this a year ago and didn't get in. But I'm curious if attending that conference, was that in Marrakesh? I don't remember. But did that double down your thoughts about being a part of an organization like GCOM, and did you see evidence of them at the UN Climate Change Conference?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Lindstrom. Yeah, you're correct that we did apply prior to my attendance at the UN Climate Conference in Madrid in December. But I would say that having been in Madrid, it really kind of brought home the fact that, you know, we can't work on this, we can't work in the climate change arena separate from everybody else. And that's not just nationally, that's not regionally, that's internationally. We're all working on this together because it affects all of us. So, you know, I think that we have a lot to learn from other regions, our peer inland regions, even within Europe, places like Germany that are doing really innovative work in terms of policy. So we do have a lot to learn from other parts of the world. So I think there's no harm certainly in finding out who's doing what in other places.
Councilmember Vento, do you know you're supposed to be chairing now because Robert stepped away?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
I'm back. Thank you.
Oh, okay. He's back.
All right. Sorry about that. Psych.
Surprise.
Further discussion, Councilmember Cummings. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I missed this, but what were the programmatic changes that were made on the other side that they invited us in when they had said no thank you before?
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings. That's a great question too. I don't know the details of exactly what happened, but the other region that was successful in that initial application was the Denver Boulder region. And I think that there were some political issues with that actually coming through and being approved. So they actually were unable to join. And I think we were basically next on the list, which is why we were asked to come on board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further questions on the report? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be contrary on this one. With everything that we've had going on, I noticed on their website that they were talking about delaying some of their reporting because of COVID. And I think until we really know what COVID is going to do to people's lifestyles in terms of are they going to go back to taking the express bus to work to downtown, or are they going to stay working from home? Are people going to want to redevelop on Lake Street with all of the civil unrest? You know, is that going to be a smooth process or is it going to be a contentious process? We just had in Minnesota here yesterday, there was a shooting of a St. Cloud police officer. He got shot in the hand, and a mob went and started vandalizing buildings and the police department because somebody spread a rumor that the cops had shot 2 people. So things are in a really chaotic time right now in terms of how things are going to go. And until we get those things figured out, I don't really want to make a 3-year commitment of what we're going to do with our staff time.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Vento.
I'll be I will be speaking in favor. I am speaking in favor of this, and I would move approval of this. I think that given what Eric presented to us, it's work we're already doing. It fits with the goals of the organization and the efforts that are currently being made. And I don't think it's asking us to take on anything new or added. So I move approval.
Second, Mr. Chair, Lindstrom.
Thank you. I have a motion that's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
I just want to also vote for or voice absolute support for this and excitement. And I also just want to caution us a little bit. We aren't going to know many things for a long time, but one thing that we definitely do know is that climate change is real and that it requires us to take very intentional and bold steps. Share that we're absolutely in unprecedented times, but that means that we need to take meaningful leadership action. So I'm super excited about this, and sorry that my other place I lived, Colorado, didn't get to take advantage of it, but I'm happy that that means we do.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion on the motion? Further discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf,
Nay.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion carries. And committee members, I'm going to introduce the next item, and then I am going to pass the chair to Councilmember Vento, who has agreed to chair the rest of the meeting. I have a panel on sort of the Native community in response to the George Floyd murder, a national panel that I'm going to be part of at 6 o'clock our time. So I will be moving on, and thanks to Councilmember Vento for chairing the meeting from here on out. So the item 8 is our next business item, 2020-141, Joint Committee's item. It's a 2020 budget amendment for the second quarter. And Heather Augustin-Huebner is here to present. Heather.
Good afternoon, Chair. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we are. Thanks.
All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Heather Augustin-Huebner. I'm the Finance Director for Community Development, and I am here to present the second quarter budget amendment. And I'll be asking you to authorize the 2020 unified budget in accordance with the attached tables. This amendment programs available reserves and new funds into the community development operating, pass-through, and capital programs. I'll walk you through the significant changes in each area. The operating adjustment to HRA revenue and expenses will program new federal funds received as a result of the Federal CARES Act. Funds are eligible to be used for administrative costs associated with COVID-19, including additional staff time needed to process income changes due to lost employment, increased technology needs due to staff remote work, and other administrative costs to keep voucher families housed during the COVID-19 crisis. The adjustment to the Livable Communities pass-through programs reserves needed to fully fund grantee reimbursement requests. Livable Communities grant programs have multi-year grant terms, and available funds are housed in reserves accounts. All grants have been awarded by the council and align with council-approved fund distribution plan. We do cash flow forecasts about twice a year, and those currently indicate that we will need to program reserves over and above what is already in the authorized budget for the 2020 expenses. The capital adjustment.
Heather, I have a quick question. Do you have a PowerPoint with this by chance?
Madam Chair, I do not.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. So basically what we're doing with the Livable Communities is there's an annual budget that we pass. We take a look, the grants are multi-year, and as if we end up having to, if we think there's going to be more costs expended in 1 year than what's in the authorized annual budget, what we'll do is we'll just pull those funds from the reserve accounts, which are basically held there in reserve for those grants that the council has already awarded. The capital adjustment will program legacy funds to address some administrative errors that we found, and they date back to 2016 and 2017. And what happened there is there was simply a disconnect in the system between what the council authorized and what ended up in the financial system. There's available reserves in the accounts. It just didn't land in the right account. And this adjustment will correct that administrative error. The Thrive outcome of stewardship is supported through responsible planning and management of resources for the Community Development Division operating, pass-through, and capital programs. The Thrive outcomes of prosperity, equity, and livability are supported by providing rent assistance to low-income families to live in safe, affordable housing. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Uh-oh, you're on mute, I think.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, were you talking?
Yes. Sorry. Does anybody do any committee members have any questions? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, and looking at the agenda for today, the pass-through budget items, the amendment recognizing a transfer of $2,100,000 from TBR reserves to the TBRA pass-through and $4 million from LCDA reserves to the LCDA pass-through. Are those based on? Can you state again why we need to move those transfers?
Madam Chair, council members, yes. So how the budget is set up right now is that there is an annual budget where we essentially look at what the revenues are, and that's what's programmed in expenses. And we're looking to change that, and you'll be hearing more about that in the third or fourth quarter budget amendment. And that will get us out of this cycle of having to do it this way. But essentially what happens is we budget what we think at the time is going to be expended on an annual basis. So think of it as two pots of money. One pot is in the reserves, and we don't program a penny of grants if we don't have adequate money essentially sitting in our bank account. So some of the money is sitting in reserves, some of it sitting in our annual budget. And when we think that the annual expenses is going to be more than what we've budgeted for that particular year, we'll reach back into the reserves and bring those into the current year budget. Because many of our grants, actually most of our grant awards, are multi-year grants, and it's always a little bit of an art to figure out how much each of those multi-year grants is going to spend in year 1, year 2, year 3. And as we do our cash flow analysis, and as we're asking for information from our subrecipients, that analysis just changes based upon the data that they give us. And that's why you're seeing this item today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more question, if I may.
Yes, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. So, Ms. Huebner, can you state what the amount of error was that needed to be corrected?
Madam Chair, council member, sorry, it's gonna look a little weird on the camera. It was, there's 2 different programs totaling just about $130,000, $140,000. There was about $99,000 with a Dakota County project and about $40,000 with a Ramsey County project. And again, when we went back and looked, the council acted on this grant award. So the council action was there, and there was just a disconnect of kind of some back-end administrative systems on the council end, and that is what we are rectifying.
It went to the wrong line item.
Madam Chair, council members, there was a grant amendment that was approved by council, and so the action to amend the grant contract was approved, but it was not synced in our PeopleSoft financial book of record. So there's funding available, and council acted to amend the award. It's just those 2 things did not get synced at that point in time. And as we were doing kind of a routine review of open grants, we noticed that and just wanted to make sure that we were correcting that item.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve agenda item 2020-141, the 2020 budget amendment for the second quarter?
Johnson moves.
Wolf seconds.
Johnson moves, Wolf seconds. Michelle, could you take roll, please?
Chair.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I've been raising my hand, but I think it's hard to tell.
I didn't see you, so I apologize. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just want to ask, when we receive reports or actions like this, I would really like to receive a presentation that visually walks through the changes. I think it's hard to make sure you're understanding what's in the document that's provided, especially those movements and the reasons behind them. It's even less helpful to have someone just to have it read to you. And I think also for the purposes of making sure that information is accessible, presented in a visually clear way. I've asked that before, and I'd really like to get all those financial documents provided or changes provided in a way that is a little more transparent. I also want to disclose that my internet is having intermittent issues. So it's kicking me off and I'm freezing. And so I just want to, in the event that this continues to get worse, say that I vote yes in the event that I can't make it through the roll. So.
Okay, so noted. Anyone else that I've missed? Okay.
Councilmember Vento, may I?
Yeah.
I'm Lisa Barajas, Community Development Director, and I just wanted to acknowledge that we have heard Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen's request in the past. And because these are coordinated budget amendments, we actually went through and discussed this with Mary Bogie. We're happy to bring that request back to her, so it would change how we present all of our budget amendments across the council. So I just wanted to make that clear that we try to do this consistently with all of our amendments and all of the committees that they go through, especially when they're unified quarterly budget amendments. But we're happy to bring that request back through her.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? I can't see many people, so speak up if you need to. Okay, Michelle, would you take roll, please?
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. We're moving on to agenda item 2020-173 to establish a 2020 public hearing date for the Public Housing Agency Annual Plan. Terry Smith. And before Ms. Smith begins, just want to forewarn you that I'm negotiating with the four-legged critter here and using the TREATS as bribes. So if you hear some strange noise, I'm not hurting the dog. He's just asking for more. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Terry Smith, and I'm here to really just set a date for a public hearing for the 2021 Public Housing Agency Plan. And the proposed action before you is that the Metropolitan Council establish a date to conduct a public hearing to discuss and receive comment on the 2021 Public Housing Agency Annual Plan. The hearing will take place at this committee on August 17th, 2020 at 4 p.m. And I have in the council chambers, I believe I put in the business item or another virtual setting, depending on where our business takes us by that time. Next slide, please. So you may recall that the Public Housing Agency Plan is a requirement of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for all agencies that administer either a Section 8 housing choice voucher or public housing program. The document is meant to serve as a guide and a convenient source of information for HUD, for the public, for program participants, and for U.S. policymakers. And it outlines the mission of the HRA work of serving the needs of low-income families and the strategies for addressing those needs in the coming year. Next slide, please. There are two parts to the Public Housing Agency Plan. One is a 5-year plan, and that's approved and conducted every 5th year. You may recall that last year in 2019, you all approved the 5-year plan that runs from 2020 to 2024. And that really provides the long-range goals for meeting the needs of low-income persons in the region. The annual plan, which is submitted every year and is the subject of this public hearing, the purpose is to provide strategies for meeting the housing needs in the coming year. So it's a shorter term plan. And it's revised and updated each year. And our goal with this is to communicate elements of the plan that have been revised in the last year. Next slide, please. A document that becomes an attachment to the plan is the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan. And that's really our main policy document that outlines all of our federal rules and regulations. It contains discretionary policies that we have, or that you all have the ability to change. It becomes a supporting document to the PHA plan and becomes available along with the plan during the public comment period. It contains things like how we select and admit people to our programs, how long we will issue vouchers for, how many bedrooms we will assign to the families that we serve. It outlines informal hearing procedures, so what steps a family needs to go through to request an informal hearing. It contains our inspection guidelines and performance standards for the program. So it's quite a thick document, and we are not recommending any significant changes this year with the PHA plan process, but you might recall some very lengthy conversations we had last fall with the Public Housing Agency plan, where we adopted what's called small area fair market rents. So those are rent limits by zip code. We adopted a policy to implement minimum rent, and we also adopted expanded biennial inspections. So those were three pretty significant changes last year. Some of that implementation has gotten delayed due to COVID. And so my plan is to come back to you in July and give you an update on where we are with those policy changes and provide some additional opportunity for discussion. Next slide, please. So HUD requires that we establish what's called a resident advisory board. And this is a group of program participants, voucher holders from all over the region, representing the broader program. And the purpose of the resident advisory board is really to serve as a focus group. And so we really, they were really helpful last year when we were implementing or adopting policies for small area fair market rents, minimum rent, and biennial inspections. Their goal is really to help us shape our policy, to provide comments on improving customer service delivery, and propose any changes that they see appropriate for policy change. As I indicated on the previous slide, we're not proposing, as an agency, we're not proposing any major policy shifts this year. And we plan to focus our time with the resident advisory board on the implementation of small area fair market rents. So what is working for program participants are the documents that we provide helpful, are the tools that we provide helpful, and in terms of implementation, what could we do to make it easier for participants and landlords? Next slide, please. So here's the timeline of what will happen with the PHA plan process. So an ongoing item for us is really reviewing our policies and our administrative plan and making draft changes to the administrative plan and PHA plan document. Here we are today to establish the public hearing date. We are scheduled RAB meetings for June that will occur within the community. So our outreach team will engage with participants on the small area fair market rents. On July 6th, we will publish the public comment period for the PHA plan and appropriate attached documents like the administrative plan. And then on August 17th, we will actually also in July, we will be engaging with you. So I will be back in July to talk to you in particular about how we award and offer project-based vouchers. So that's Chapter 17 in the administrative plan. And I would like to dig in with you all to get your thoughts on how we award and offer those vouchers. So that will occur in July. And then the public hearing for the documents will occur on August 17th. Public comments are open until August 31st. And then the final plan and administrative plan will come before you September 8th and to the full council September 23rd. And then after approval will be submitted to HUD. Next slide, please. So again, the proposed action is that we establish a date to conduct a public hearing to discuss this. Oh, I didn't change this slide from last year. So it should be the same as the first slide. I apologize about that, council members, but it's really to discuss and receive comment on the 2021 annual plan. And the hearing will take place on August 17th, 2020 at 4 p.m. So the motion that's accurate, it was on the first slide and in the business item, and I apologize for that error. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Terry, for this work. And I just with all staff, but, I really want to thank you too. You've been doing a lot of heavy lifting and we've made some really good changes in the work that the HRA is doing. And so I just want to thank you for that. I'm just very grateful. So two things. When you come to the council and talk about how we, I want to make sure I use the words you used, conduct the voucher program. Is that an annual thing? Did we do that last year? Is there something kind of that we're looking at differently because maybe of some changes we've made with the small area program, or just, can you expound on that a little bit?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Johnson, we have an administrative plan. I'm going to grab it here because my staff makes fun of me because I still like my paper copy, but it's this document and it's thick. And in this document are all of the HUD regulations, so requirements of the program, but then, most pages in here also have some discretionary policies where we all decide as policymakers how we want to set those policies. For example, the small area fair market rents is one of those areas. And so each year when we review our policies for the year, we oftentimes come to the CDC with policy recommendations for change. In some other cases, there are things that come up throughout the year in our conversations as we're conducting our business with you all that trigger us to review certain policies in here with you, which is why you may recall that we currently have an RFP out for the offer and award of project-based vouchers. And we had quite a bit of discussion on the criteria for that. So because you all had lots of questions on that, I decided it might be helpful to go through that chapter with you and have some discussion on where we want to put priorities. So the administrative plan is posted with the PHA plan document so you can see the current policies. And if you want to thumb through this and you have certain areas that you want to dig into, we're happy to do it. I also think as we establish our housing group with a smaller number of council members, this will be a good opportunity to maybe provide some education on how the process works. But it's not possible to go through the whole entire document every year. So we just try to pick out what we think we've heard from you all and focus on those areas. I'm not sure if that's helpful.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's great. That really brings it all together for me. And so I'm anxious to, align with kind of some of the things you're seeing, but things that we're seeing and dig into that a little bit. So I appreciate that. And then I think I asked this last year around the resident advisory boards. How many are there? How many are participating and how are the people selected? Again, I know they're part of the program, but is that where they come to staff and staff has some process, or is that blessed by council? I'm just curious. I forgot.
So we reach out to, we have criteria. So we're reaching out to the broader voucher population in all areas of the region. So we're looking in all communities. We're making sure that there's a variety of participants that includes people of color, people that are living in areas of concentrated poverty, people that are living in the outer areas of the region. So we want it to be representative of all voucher holders. But the last time we did an outreach, I think we mailed 400 letters. And then ask folks if they have an interest in being on this resident advisory board. They fill out just a simple form and send it back. And, you know, it's difficult to get people to participate, but we have a group of about 20 residents that we've been engaging with for about a year. And we use them all throughout the year last year to, as a focus group, as we were implementing all of these policy changes. So they helped us design our communication pieces regarding the policy changes. They had, we spent some time with them this year already, looking at the tool and reviewing the tool for small area fair market rents. So that's sort of the process.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate all those answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Speak up, because I can only see a few of you. Okay, hearing or seeing none. Do we have a motion to approve agenda item 2020-173 to establish the 2020 public hearing date for the Public Housing Agency Annual Plan, August 17th, 2020 at 4:00 p.m.
Wolf moves approval.
Wolf moves.
Second.
I'm not sure who I heard there. I think I heard Lee. Did I hear Councilmember Lee?
Yeah, I think Molly beat me.
Oh, okay. Okay, Councilmember Wolf moves, Councilmember Cummings seconds. Michelle, if you would, please take roll.
Thank you, Chair. Before we take roll.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just had a question about the time. Is everybody okay with the 4 o'clock time? I know in the past we've had a discussion about moving it to a later time at 6 p.m. so that people could get off work. I know now people are working at home, so it might be a little easier for folks, but I just thought it would be worth bringing up and checking with the other council members on the time of the public hearing, because at one point we voted to have the hearing changed from, I believe, 4 o'clock to 6.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wolf wants to
Yes,
speak.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did that and nobody showed up at 6 o'clock either. So given the myriad choices that people have of how to provide information, I mean, we even accept faxes, for goodness sake. You know, there's emails, there's letters, there's speaking in person, and traditionally we hardly get anybody showing up for public hearings in person. If we're fortunate enough to have a short meeting that day, I don't want to have to sit around until 6 to have the public hearing for nobody to show up. So I prefer the 4 o'clock.
If there isn't a motion to amend to change the time, we'll stick with the 4 o'clock. Hearing none. Michelle, if you'd call the roll.
Yes, Chair. Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries, and that completes our business items for the evening. Our last item on the agenda is information, a report on the Regional Park System Regional Park System Additions Project by Emmett Mullen and Jessica Lee. Thank you, Emmett and Jessica.
Good afternoon, Chair and council members. My name is Emmett Mullen, and I'm the Regional Parks Unit Manager here at the council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Before we launch in, is it okay if this is about a 15-minute item? We'll try to hustle, but I want to make sure that's still okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Today, Jessica, Lee, and I are here to present the system additions process, focusing on boundary adjustments. We were originally at your May 18th meeting, but ran out of time. And so we set this part of the presentation aside and are picking it up today. as you may remember from our last presentation, the council is currently hosting a system additions process, so a regional parks and trails system addition process, which we do about every 4 years. During this time, the 10 regional park implementing agencies have the opportunity to put forward proposals to add parks or trails to the regional parks and trails system. The outcome of this process is that the council decides whether or not to designate a unit as part of the regional park system. The slide that's currently up is our timeline. And really the only thing I want you to take away from this slide is that we're just transitioning from the submission of applications into the review and drafting of a recommendation. Right now, the regional or the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission is reviewing the specific regional park and trail proposals. Their second meeting will be on Thursday at 4 p.m. And you are welcome to listen in on that. If you're interested, just go to the link on the council's website. And we plan, the other takeaway on this timeline is that we plan to complete the project by the end of the year. So that's broadly about the system additions process. Today, our focus is on boundary adjustments. And boundary adjustments are a subset of this larger process. And just to take a step back, boundary adjustments focus on units that the council has already approved to be part of the system. So park agencies are now considering adding or modifying an existing park or trail boundary. And we want to update the Regional Parks Policy Plan to provide greater clarity on what constitutes a boundary adjustment, a major one and a minor one. So this is where we want your input. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Jessica, who will walk through our proposal. So Greg, next slide, please. Jessica.
Good evening. This is Jessica Lee, Senior Park Planner. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So boundary adjustments occur when there is a need to change or expand a council-approved master plan boundary for a regional park or trail. Most boundary adjustments are made through the system additions process. However, sometimes there are minor adjustments that can be accomplished through a master plan amendment. Some of you might remember the 7-acre boundary adjustment at Blakely Bluffs last year, which was more of a boundary correction, or the 2 boundary adjustments at Kingswood Special Recreation Feature that allowed for acquisition of a 16-acre parcel and an 18-acre parcel from a previously unwilling seller. There are also countless examples of land exchanges or conversions due to utility needs, most of which are only a couple acres or less. These minor boundary adjustments are much simpler and timelier than going through the system additions process, but we haven't had a clear definition for what makes one minor. In order to be transparent and consistent moving forward, we're working on developing a criteria to define a minor boundary adjustment. Next slide, please. So here's our proposed criteria for minor boundary adjustments. The maximum size will be 20 acres. Anything larger than 20 acres would need to be considered through the system additions process. The proposed addition or adjustment must be contiguous to a council-approved master plan boundary, and it needs to be consistent with the siting and acquisition policy criteria, which is found in tables 4.1 and 4.2 of Chapter 4 of the Regional Parks Policy Plan. This is the same criteria used for the system additions process that we saw last month. Next slide, please. So we presented this proposal at our partners meeting with the agencies in April. A key takeaway from that conversation was size considerations. Some agencies were concerned that 20 acres was too limiting. Other agencies proposed having a percentage of the total park, such as 10 or 20%, instead of a flat 20 acres. There was also the question of, can boundary adjustments be handled solely through the master plan amendment process and remove them from the system additions process altogether? Another key takeaway was the question of how this policy will affect trail boundary adjustments or trail realignments, which are sometimes needed to accommodate utility projects or road widenings. Next slide, please. We also presented this proposal at the May 7th MPOSC meeting. Some of the commissioners questioned whether all boundary adjustments could be accomplished through the master plan amendment process. Conversely, there was conversation about requiring all boundary adjustments to go through the system additions process unless a land exchange or conversion was required. Next slide, please. So given what we have heard from our agency partners and MPOSC members, we would like to pose the following questions to you for discussion. Is 2 acres too little or too much? Would a percent of the park area be better? Should minor boundary adjustments only be allowed for necessary land exchanges, conversions, or utility changes? Or should all boundary adjustments be handled through the master plan amendment process instead of the system additions process? This would allow them to happen on an as-needed basis versus waiting for the system additions update, which happens every 4 years. We know that's a lot of questions, and we don't expect to answer them all today, but we would love to hear any input that you have. And with that, we are happy to take questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson.
Comment. Sorry about that. I had too many windows going as I was reading everything. Thank you for the, Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you for the report. So quick question, in our council inboxes, did everybody receive the letter from Jonathan Blaming, I believe it is, with the Three Rivers testimony on this item? The email, I believe, goes to all people either on this committee or maybe the council, and it just refers to that they understand that the testimony that they gave would not be forwarded to us. So they listed it out and carefully go through all the items. So I guess I want to make sure that that's part of the record for this discussion. And it should be in everybody's inboxes as of Friday, June 12th. So first on process, Madam Chair. So, you know, we all have a lot going on. We can't get to all the committee meetings. We try to monitor things as they're moving along. MPOSC is hugely important. But, you know, I appreciate the overview on the presentation, but it seems after reading this letter that there's a lot of detail and further discussion, which maybe you're trying to vet through us, if I'm understanding correctly. But I am not a subject matter expert in this area, so I'm trying to at least on the part of Three Rivers and maybe others that raise similar questions, what the concerns are in how we're going about this to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve as well.
Councilmember Cummings, are you trying to get my attention by chance?
Not right now. Actually, the
okay.
questions that Councilmember Johnson asked were primarily my questions as well.
Okay. Emma or Jessica, would you like to respond to Councilmember Johnson?
I would be happy to. Councilmember Wolf, did you want to go first? I saw you had your hand up.
Somebody's got a better screen than I do.
Unmute myself again. I have the same concerns that Councilmember Johnson has. I am sort of a subject matter expert in it. And I think it is important. I don't think the current system is broken. I think we're okay doing boundary adjustments for existing park units through the master plan process for the reasons that Jonathan said. And also in cities, it's pretty clear where the edges of the park are going to be, and it might be something small. But when you get out in the rural areas, you might have a property owner that has 40 acres of really high quality natural area that hates the parks unit and doesn't want to even be in the master plan, but then they die and their heirs want to sell the property and they don't want to sit on it for 4 years until we have a master plan update in order to do that. So then we lose the opportunity. I don't think the current system is broken, so I'm concerned about the proposed changes.
Councilmember Wolf, do you have any thoughts with regard to the maximum of 20 acres or going with a percentage?
To me, if it's a boundary adjustment, I don't think there needs to be a maximum number of acres. You can go through the master plan process to do the boundary adjustment instead of the systems process for any existing park unit that has something come up as being available in between the parks plan updates.
Councilmember Wolf and Chair Vento, could I respond to this? Because I have a question perhaps back to Councilmember Wolf. She is a subject matter expert on this. I recognize that. What Jonathan Vlaming is suggesting, and I wanted to get to Councilmember Johnson's point, is that we just simply handle any boundary adjustments through a master plan amendment process. That is just what's required today, and that will be what's required tomorrow, regardless of what we decide. I can tell you our park staff, as you know, has turned over since the last time we did a system additions process. And so I am currently operating under the understanding that for major additions, like let's say something over 20 acres or even 100 acres, the agency would have to wait until the boundary adjustment process in order to have that entertained. For small little adjustments, like Jessica said, for Blakely Bluffs, it was like a 7-acre adjustment. We just allowed that to go forward through a minor master plan amendment process. So Councilmember Wolf, am I understanding the status quo incorrectly? Because I'm sorry to ask you that question. I should have called you.
I guess, I mean, 100 acres adding in should have a different process than 7, but waiting for the systems plan, it would not work. And it sounded through what I was reading like we had to wait for the bigger boundary adjustments until there was a system plan. And I don't want to miss out on that once in a lifetime opportunity where somebody might have a fantastic private preserve that then their heirs want to get rid of, and I don't want to miss out on that. If it's contiguous to an existing property in some place that can be incorporated into an existing park, I think the master planning process is sufficient. I don't think we need to wait for the systems plan.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask one more question, because I currently am asking the regional park implementing agencies to submit a system addition request for boundary adjustments over 20 acres. So I just want to be really transparent that could have been a mistake. And we're currently reviewing 4 proposals from the regional park implementing agencies. And some of them are really big, like let's just go with Battle Creek. They're proposing a 200-acre boundary adjustment. It's an awesome proposal. There's a bunch of different parcels included. And I said, Ramsey County, you need to wait. You can't move that forward right away until we have this system additions process. The system additions process is running. They submitted it. Now we're reviewing it as part of that. Councilmember Wolf, I'm sorry to ask this question, but are you suggesting that we just handle that through a master plan amendment, which we would anyways, but that they won't have to wait for that system additions process?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilmember Wolf.
I want to make sure we're still being respectful of the chair as we go here. If you have something like that where it's multiple property owners, I think waiting for the systems addition process can make sense. But if you're adding one property because it came up from a previously unwilling seller, I guess is a different. If you're saying, okay, we want to take this whole, half-mile square area and add it into the park's boundary, that's different than a single parcel. But if it's a single parcel, I don't think that's contiguous to an existing park. I don't think you need to wait for a systems addition process. Does that make sense?
Any additional questions or comments? Greg, if we could take a look at the slide with the questions on it.
Councilmember Lee and Councilmember Chambliss both have their hands up.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Wolf. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Wolf. Yeah. So my question, or my I guess my issue is I think the answer depends on let's say what if it's a parcel of land the size of William O'Brien State Park and it's at the edge of our boundaries and it straddles different districts of the Met Council, or different cities or different counties. If it was a land that huge, what is the most politically expedient system for that to be to kind of, that would be a pickle we'd have to consider, right? So I think my consideration would be, what if it was a piece of land that big, and how would we handle that?
Councilmember or Chair Vento, Councilmember Lee, thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. Like when a huge opportunity comes up, like a big addition like that, I would suggest that we would run a system additions process off cycle, that we would literally amend the regional parks policy plan just to pursue that opportunity so we wouldn't lose it. Get back to Councilmember Wolf on her suggestion, like multiple parcels, pretty big acreage, let's find a threshold. So I am in significant conversations with both our Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, our Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission chair, and our regional park implementing agencies. And I think we can find a threshold that people can live with. And this is great insight from today, and I'm feeling a lot better about where we are. So excuse me, I know Councilmember Chambliss has a question.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Chair Bento. Mr. Mullen, based on what I'm hearing from the discussion and our resident council expert, Wendy, I think that, there are certain variables, and I'm comfortable if there is a compelling reason by our staff who has experience to propose a threshold or amend the system, what do we call it, system addition process, then I'm comfortable with that. Additionally, if I may, Chair Bento, regarding the questions to the council member in general, I think the same thing applies to the acreage. If I'm looking at acreage size and percentage, I'd feel more comfortable looking at some acreage size thresholds than a flat out percentage, because there might be just some things where a percentage doesn't do justice to what the need is. And there might be other variables that can come into play. So I don't know that we necessarily have to have a set standard for decisions in that case for percentages or even the acreage threshold, maybe taking each case at a time unless it becomes too cumbersome from the staff for some reason, or not enough direction to the staff. So I would like to let the staff kind of talk about, what are your pain points in terms of the questions to the council.
Or Jessica, do you have any comments?
Councilmember Chair Bento and Councilmember Chambliss, thank you for that perspective. And I appreciate you really capturing the nuance of finding that threshold. But if there is a compelling acquisition, we don't want to lose that opportunity if it's off cycle. The one pain point or thing I'm wondering about is I'm interested in exploring a percentage, because let's just say you have a park reserve, okay? Park reserves are at least 2,000 acres. Some of them are 5,000 acres. And if we had a percentage, you might get a proportionate, they'd bring there'd be a proportionality to it. So like a larger acquisition, like let's say a 400-acre acquisition came up, if we did use a percentage like 20% on a park reserve, it could accommodate that kind of acquisition off cycle. Adding 400 acres of natural lands, while would be expensive up front, the operational cost of that wouldn't be as great because it's actually a small percentage of the total park reserve. So I am, mulling over the percentage idea, but I'm really interested in insights.
So maybe the record should show that Mr. Mullen is mulling. Sorry, I had to just throw that in there. It's late. I'm only seeing a few faces. I think I see Johnson and then Wolf.
Hands up.
Okay, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm trying to find the distinction, but I'm going to go back to the letter that was presented by Three Rivers Park District that said a solution to this would be to add definition to boundary adjustments in the system plan, such as this: boundary adjustments. Boundary adjustments are made through the master plan amendment process, which we do now. Once a master plan amendment for a boundary adjustment is approved by the council, those adjustments are then recognized as in-holdings and are afforded the rights and protections of in-holding status. Approved boundary adjustments are then documented in the next update of the system plan. So would that not accommodate making sure that our current plan is, I guess, codified or given definition, and then it also refers to then, I guess, the final incorporation into the systems plan or final blessing or whatever word you would use. I'm really still trying to understand why we would. I know I think I'm understanding the desire for some kind of percentage or acreage, but the devil's always in the details. And I hate doing that because sure enough, something's going to come up and it's going to get hung up in some kind of thoughtful, but maybe arbitrary numbering. And maybe that's what I'm hearing the park district doing some hand wringing about, because you don't want to lose opportunity. So, and maybe Councilmember Wolf, if I'm reading this wrong, or Emmett, if I'm understanding this wrong, please let me know. But I think they're trying to help us solve the problem, and I think it's well stated. So I'll just leave it at that.
Councilmember Wolf, do you want to respond? Yep, and then
thank you, Madam Chair. So the master plan amendments do come through to us. They go through MPOSC and community development and the full council for approval. So it's not like something would happen and there's no vetting process. We can say no if it doesn't make sense. The difference with doing a policy plan update to take care of something opportunistic is it's a much longer process with a defined public hearing time, like we do for the PHA plan and all of those things. That's much longer and drawn out. And that may be the difference between being able to get that property or having it go to somebody else.
Emmett, did you have any?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Vento and committee. Jonathan Vlaming at Three Rivers Park District is really concerned about not losing opportunities. And so that's what he's laying out in his letter. So I want to be clear that I understand that, and we've been talking. The one thing that I am considering is the council has a statutory responsibility to conduct this system additions process. Councilmember Wolf said, she thinks about it as like, what do you want to be when you grow up, regional park system? This is our opportunity to say, what should we have in the system and not? Boundary adjustments are really a subset of this larger conversation and this council role. And they are so the really big boundary adjustments, like major additions, like Councilmember Lee saying, what if we wanted to add something the size of like a state park? You know, should we just allow that through a master plan process? And I would say probably not. That probably needs some more deliberation, even though the council will see the master plan amendment. It's just not as big a deal. Like system additions is a big deal. This is a process that began last October, and here we are today. You know, we're making our way through the proposal. So it is. What I'm reflecting on is maybe we don't have the threshold proposal right. 20 acres is probably too small. But is there a higher number, like 100 acres, that would be more workable? Or a percentage, like 10% or 20%, or maybe both of those, and then say whichever's more, for instance. I'm going to stop if I haven't completely confused everybody.
I'm not seeing any hands up, but so if you have something to say, speak up.
Eva has her hand up.
Who does?
Riva.
Oh, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm good with either the larger of the two, either the acreage or the percentage, determining whether or not, and hopefully I've got the issue right here, it becomes a system addition or part of the master plan. Is that the question?
That is the question, Councilmember Chambliss and Chair Vento. What is that threshold that would cause it to have to wait for a policy plan amendment and a system additions process? And we're saying just the really big ones. The more regular situation, in my mind, is generally they're smaller additions. They're way less than 100 acres. There's like an opportunity pops up that a landowner that was never willing, never wanted to be included in an administrative boundary, which includes those private inholdings. But all of a sudden they're like, well, we want that. And the park agency doesn't have them in their administrative boundary. And so they need to do a master plan amendment. So Councilmember Chambliss, I just want to say, I think that we're getting there. So.
Okay, I just want to
Go ahead,
a little bit further
Chambliss.
clarification.
Yep.
Okay, so I hear possibly two questions. One, should we be using acreage size? And the other question, acreage size or percentage, and the other question, how much of a acreage size or percentage? Is that correct? Are we deciding on the quantity or just the acreage and the percentage for the policy plan amendment or system addition? I mean, master plan.
Emmett.
No, system addition.
Councilmember Chambliss and Chair Vento, we are deciding, all we're asking right now is for input. We're going to just listen to what you discussed today, and we will put a recommendation together that will come back to you in August. And that's when we launch the public hearing date, just like Terry just did. And there will be an opportunity for not only you to weigh in, but members of the public.
Councilmember Johnson, I see your hand up.
Madam Chair, do we still have a quorum?
We're not in a business. We're not taking any votes, so.
It's a public meeting, though.
Sorry, Chair Vento, for an information item, we don't need a quorum, but
right.
Thank you for the concern.
And
we have lost a few members.
Yeah, I think there are 4 or 5 of us.
Well, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Cummings. Oh, Councilmember Johnson, you had a follow-up question?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I just thought all public meetings of committees and councils, you were in, a notice meeting with a notice agenda. Now, maybe, I don't know, I can go back to open meeting. I just want to be a little careful because we're deciding some pretty major stuff that has pretty big implications. And we've got some pretty big players out there that have some pretty strong opinions. So I'm getting a little bit nervous given you know.
No decisions on this are going to be made tonight. This is just input. The decisions will be made in August. And Emmett will come back to us with a report on that. Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. Is it only Three Rivers who have recently expressed their concern, or has that concern been raised by other implementing agencies? And I believe, Emmett, you said that you are in conversation with them as well. Is that correct?
Emmett?
Councilmember Cummings and Chair Vento, yes, that is correct. We did get, I've had conversations with multiple, and some people feel like a threshold is, I think all of them are considering like some level of threshold is acceptable, just not 20 acres. They'd like to see an increase. Ramsey County in particular, I've been in conversation with. So this is something, Councilmember Johnson, I just wanted to give you some level of comfort that we are talking with Three Rivers staff and working through this together. And I want to continue and just say, I think we've got a lot of great input that we can put a recommendation together that we can bring back to you.
Well, and Emmett and Jessica and Lisa, I'm wondering if it might be beneficial to have kind of a little update before August, just to kind of get a handle on where we're at with this prior to any decision. I don't know that that's necessary, but maybe consider that as an option.
Chair Vento, if I may, we would be happy to bring back an update on what we're considering, get additional feedback and input as well, and hopefully on an agenda that's not nearly as long as this one, so that we can hear from the full complement of this committee as well, and get some additional input before we bring that back to you in August.
That would be great. That would be great. Mm-hmm. So is there any further discussion on this item? And hearing none, is there anything else for the good of the cause? And seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.